You're listening to Pathways and Means, a podcast that inspires and shows people how to tap into their creative spirit. We sit down with leaders and makers in every industry to talk about their process, what inspires them, and about how to build incredible things with the power of creativity. The future belongs to the creators, so come join us. This is Pathways and Means.
It's your boy SJ and I'm in the building, baby. You know, Pathways means we back in it and we have something real special for y'all today. Now, as you know, the world has changed tremendously just within the last few years. I mean, especially, in the education field and, they can't keep teachers, Subs is doing all kind of crazy things. And we have a guest who actually is navigating those waters with them gators. And so I'm going to welcome Jephthah Schlingensiepen to the building.
Thank you.
How you doing today, sir?
I'm great, man. Happy to be here.
Man, absolutely. So let me ask you, what motivated you to get into the education field?
What motivated me to get in the education field? It's kind of interesting. I was always very motivated to get out of the education field. Like as a student and going to school, I didn't feel like I was good at it. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I never saw myself as successful in education. Which was interesting. And then I got to college and found out that was really not true. I could do those things. And that kind of started my discovery of self-worth. And then throughout that whole process, I ended up graduating and planning to go into just therapy with a mental health center or a team. And somebody called me who I'd worked with years prior and was like, hey, there's a social work position open in the district. Why don't you apply for it? And I thought, how is that going to translate? At the time, I'd worked at a all-girls mental health facility for about 3 years as a supervisor, and it seemed like a pretty big switch, right? I was like, I don't know, education or, go into therapy, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just decided to kind of take a leap of faith and go back into the education world. And part of it was kind of sweet too, because it was in 501, which after I moved here from Germany, I went to 501. Okay. So I kind of thought to myself, okay, this would be kind of cool. And so it did end up being really cool getting to go back and work around people that kind of raised me at different points in my life.
Wow, that's interesting. Now you said 501. Now, what particular school do you work at?
So I am a special education social worker at Ross Elementary School.
Okay, so I live right around the corner from Ross. Now, Ross has some real challenges over there. I've heard some statistics as far as, I want to say, reading or math levels, and out of the whole state, I heard that they're within the bottom 5% or something like that. Okay. So, and with that, I mean, what kind of, is that accurate? Have you heard,
I don't know exactly. I focus more on skill-based instruction, so social emotional things are kind of my bag. So I can't speak to the scores necessarily as to what that looks like, but I certainly see all the challenges that young people face today. Yeah. And those challenges are also, trying to think of how to explain this best, I guess a lot of young families and people impacted by all these different things, and the schools are kind of the meeting place for all of that, right? So it used to be, I think, a long time before I went to school even, that schools were simply a place where you go and you get your education and you go home, right? And I think over time, education, not just Ross, I think all schools have kind of turned into many different things, which is great. But I think now, schools are meal sites. Schools may even act as a mental health center in some capacity, or have some of the resources in-house, clothing banks, right? And these are all wonderful things. I'm not saying at all that that's problematic. Right. But I think we forget that a lot of times, right? There's so much more, I think, that the educational world's taking on now than it formerly did.
Right. I know there's a lot of people that come beside Ross. I know when I was on the board of Scent, that they definitely dealt with them a whole lot. I think there's a lot of churches that go there, and there was something called lunch buddies. So they would go there and sit and eat with the child and everything like that. So, man, I'm glad that you're over there pouring in. I mean,
it's a really great place to be. There's so many wonderful, smart kids, so many loving families. Everybody's really invested. Now, obviously, with COVID, right, and the different things that
The new normal.
the things that had to be done kind of throughout that time to kind of mitigate, of course, brought on a whole another set of challenges. But I love it. I really love it. I love building those relationships with the kids, role modeling the kind of appropriate ways of handling certain things, and I love getting to meet the families and talk to them and kind of figure things out. And it's maybe, I don't know if everybody would enjoy it, but I'm kind of a people person, and so I really kind of like getting in there and asking questions and letting people know, if they're around me, that we're gonna be okay. And that seems kind of weird, but that's kind of my thing.
That's
like if you see me somewhere, like we're good.
I mean, that's really good. Like you said, a lot of people might not, and a lot of people are not jumping in to that field for reasons. I mean, a lot of people have high anxiety when it comes to, dealing with children or whatever. I used to go there when I was a big, so I used to meet my little there at Ross, but then cool. COVID happened and everything else. And so that brings me to this, one of the reasons I became a big and things like that is I was a little brother. 4 older brothers, 3 sisters. I was the youngest boy, so I never had like a little brother or anything like that.
Sure.
So, what type of obstacles did you face coming up as far as that may have led you into some of the things that you're into now?
I think about that a lot. And I thought about it for a long time about what some of the obstacles were, because my life was like pretty privileged in comparison to a lot of people, right? Like, so I grew up in Germany. I had grandparents there, I had grandparents here. I got to come over here quite a few times on an airplane. So like, not something that not a lot of people experience, I think, early on in life. So that happened. And then when I came here, like I went to school, I went to middle school, and I started having a really tough time.
Okay.
And so like I told you earlier, I felt like I wasn't really successful in school. Like I wasn't really cut out for that. I wasn't smart enough. Different things happened in my life that kind of reinforced that message, I think, as I've kind of spent time processing that. And the one thing that really keeps coming back to me is being an immigrant. Like, I came here and I kind of had a leg cut off. I was in Germany until 3rd grade. I came here, I joined Whitson in 4th grade. I knew German and a little bit of English, enough to get by, and then I went to Whitson for 4th grade, and I was in class, and then I was part of the time with Spanish-speaking kids in like an English second language class.
Okay.
Which was just about as good as it was going to get, right? There wasn't really any German second language type classes, right. So I kind of got what I got. And that was okay, but then I went to middle school, and I looked at some of like the bound books that we got for like a 5th grade graduation. I looked at my work, and I was like, like if I look at that now, I'm like, I can't believe this was ever like passed on anywhere, but
right.
What were they going to do? And so when I reflect back on that, I kind of feel like I came into the game with a leg missing. Right, I didn't have some of the same terminology. I came to 4th grade and people were talking about verbs and adjectives, and I'm like, what?
Right.
I have no idea. Yeah. I have no reference point. Everything in German is completely different, right, in terms of the names and wording for things. And so that's one thing that I think back on that I think impacted me a lot, because I didn't feel that success in school. I didn't feel connected in many ways. Kids in my school, kids had already been together for 4 years in some instances. They had their friendships, things like that. And I didn't have any problems making friends or anything like that. But, I kind of struggled through 4th and 5th grade. Then I got to middle school. And I'm still kind of struggling, but I'm finding out that me and my peers get along. That's a good thing. So then I start kind of doing things to have them like me, right? Like start cutting up a little bit, doing silly things. Nothing terrible. But then I had friends who I really respected too that started kind of hustling on the side and doing drugs and things like that. And that discovery was awesome, right? So I was like one of the last groups of kids that I think had DARE at Whitson.
Okay.
And I remember them telling me, you're going to smoke this and you're going to turn into a frog. You're going to die, you're going to choke. And then I got to middle school and I can't remember. Yeah, I smoked some weed or something like that. And I didn't really get high. And then like I did it again. I had like the greatest night ever. And then I was kind of like, okay, this is cool. And I just checked out. Like I still did enough to get by, I think. Teachers always told my parents I had potential and how like I was really smart and all that. And I heard that, but I didn't believe that. And potential,
we all know what that means.
Man, I still hear it a lot. And like, it's just a a killer, you know? Like, I remember hearing potential, and it was like, yeah, you're pretty smart, but you're kind of a dumbass now, you know?
It means nothing, you know. It got potential. Saying it got potential means you ain't doing nothing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, like you could do it, but you're not, right? And so that was kind of hard, you know. I struggled through all that, and I don't think people were wrong. I think I did have potential. I just wasn't firing all cylinders. But at that point, I don't think people were thinking about it in terms that I'm discussing now, and I definitely wasn't thinking about it in terms of like sadness, right? Fear about certain things, fear about not being as good at things or not knowing certain terminologies or what have you, right? And so I found great comfort in my friends, and I did all the things that my friends wanted to do for a long time, and that, you know, it caused problems, caused strain in my family and in my relationships with family members and some of my friends and things, and of course all kinds of things happened to friends in the meantime. But I was just kind of there for all of it, and it ended up now being a really great thing. But at the time, I mean, you could have never accounted for the fact that all the things that everybody was upset about were going to be the things that made me, right?
Man, that's so dope, man. Just the way that you put it and even ended it. But you know, there's something that me and you both have in common. We're both sons of men of the cloth. You know, my dad being an imam. Now, is your dad a bishop?
He's a minister at a non-denominational church, so United Church of Christ. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now, how did that impact your life? Because I mean, I can already tell you and I know this podcast isn't about me, but I was always like, who gonna stoop the lowest? Because people were like, you know, well, you know, he gonna hit you with that Allah stick or whatever, and then I'm like, I'm just gonna act out. So I actually went further than I should have did in some things, and you know what your experience is, you know, from
I respect it now. Growing up, I think it was just kind of like the reality of things. Like, Dad worked at a church and had a congregation and did what ministers do, you know, and I didn't really recognize or acknowledge the work for what it was, which was really just kind of creating safety and connection amongst people, right?
Right.
I mean, way simplified, but that's pretty much what he does, right? And I think that's kind of what he tries to instill in the community. And so I think that part was something that definitely rubbed off on me, between my mom being a psychologist and my dad being a minister. Well, if you were to put that on like a line or something, what's in the middle? I would argue a social worker, right?
I can dig that.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I found myself. So I kind of saw that growing up, and for a long time I just thought it was. I don't know if I really had any issues with it, but when things got hard between me and my father, I used to try putting that in his face, or say things about God to see if he would get agitated or see if he would take the bait. And he really didn't, you know, like he never took the bait on that. He would really kind of break it down for me, and, you know, just kind of put it in simple terms, and then be like, okay, now. And of course I didn't really have a response to that, because just about every time he was pretty spot on with it.
Your dad is a good guy, man, and very educated the way that he'll talk to you and make sure you understand things, and just as far as his kindness in general, the non-judgmental approach.
Yeah.
You know,
I got real fortunate there, that's for sure.
Now, we haven't even talked about this shit, but you got bars. You got like mad bars.
Yep.
How do you approach your creative process as far as when you're gonna approach a song or anything? I know you were just before we went live, you were talking about a song that you just wrote.
Yeah.
And so
I can kind of tell you the story about it, I guess.
Yeah,
I was running around with my friends, and a good friend of mine, Hassan, made music around middle school and freshman year in there, and him and a lot of his friends, and we started hanging out a lot. And I was always around music and always interested in that. And when they were making rap music, I heard Coming Out Hard by Ep.10 and MJG in Germany when I think it was like 90, I think it came out in 95, and I heard it in like 97, I think.
Well, it came out, the reason I
95 or 96, one of those 2 years, I'm pretty sure.
I say you're right about 95.
Yeah. I think it had been out for about 2 years by the time I heard it. And I heard it at a friend's house in Germany. His dad was listening to it, and I was immediately like, I mean, I grew up in like the whitest place on earth, right? So like when I heard that, it was so different from anything that I've heard. Like I was always hearing like Mozart and Bach and stuff, and like old stuff, and most German music like sucks. So I heard that, and I was immediately like, oh my God, what is this? This is crazy, you know? And so I didn't really know what it was, but I heard it and was like, this is insane. so I always loved rap music and hip hop and everything about it. And so then I moved here, and then around 7th or 8th grade, when we started hanging out, they were making a lot of music. And I just remember hanging out with them, just thinking like, man, this is so cool. Like, I want to do this, you know, like, and they were pretty good. And I had never really done any of that. And so as time went on, like, I became better with the English language. And like, this was about 15 years ago now.
Okay.
And when I would leave their presence or whatever, when I wasn't around them anymore, I was like, man, this is so dope. And I'd like catch myself just like rapping to stuff like rock music, jazz music, just anything. I would just catch myself like picking up on the beat and just like kind of coming up with stuff, right? And in the beginning, one of the first things I ever wrote, I think I was with some friends hanging out over on Madison.
Okay.
And there was a guy out on the sidewalk, and he was like rolling up some rocks in a joint paper. And he'd obviously been smoking some things, you know. And so I was watching him, and he was way out of it. And it was like one of my first encounters with somebody in that headspace, you know. And I was like, this is crazy. And I wrote a poem about him, like, and it was like akin to comparing him to like a stray alley cat. Right, and like, and when I saw him, they did like dilated pupils and was looking at me and was just looking like a cat that just had a light shone on him, you know. And I wrote this essentially a poem about it. My friend saw it and he was like, man, this is dope, you know. And like, that was kind of the end of it. And so then for the next 15 years, I just kept writing stuff. So like in school, I enjoyed writing. After that, I enjoyed that kind of stuff, and I enjoyed just kind of writing lyrics and. Like computer site like Google Drive, or there was a website called Pure Rave a long time ago. I would just like jot little things down and just kind of try to make it flow. And so then we fast forward to 2020 and the pandemic, and I was at home. Like the kids had been just all over me all week long. I was tired of being home, and I told my wife, I was like, babe, I'm gonna make a rap album. And she was like, you don't even know how to rap. And I was like, girl, you know. So then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to flash a little something. So I started kind of writing at home and rapping in front of her, and she was like, man, this is crazy. You've always known how to do this? And I was like, yeah, pretty much. There's like maybe 5 people who'd seen me do that beforehand. It was typically like drunk leaving the club, you know, like in a car with like 6 people and somebody's turning it up. Yeah, exactly, right? And so I just always had a love for that and kept that going. And then I decided that I was going to start making music because I really felt like I had a lot to I always feel like I got something to say, you know, but I felt like I had a lot of heavy things to get off my chest at the time. And during the time at home, like I really kind of had to kind of look at more things. I guess the mirror was kind of toward me, right? Like I really had to kind of look at things that were problematic for me and kind of analyze like why certain things are difficult or why they're not and where is that coming from and things like that. And so I felt like I had a lot to get off my chest. And at the time, being at home, like I was depressed, right? And like I always knew I struggled with anxiety and depression. And so I started putting that in the music. And not like on some sob story stuff or anything like that, but really just to kind of like put it out there. And I thought, you know what, if I'm sitting here at home feeling this, I'm sure there's thousands of other people feeling that too. Man,
it's so dope. I don't know why everything is going like this, but bro, you just keep lining them up for me. So, trauma-based healing. I mean, that's what it sounds like. So this is therapy for you.
Oh, 100%. And I've been in therapy before, and I think it's great. I probably should be doing that again, but this has kind of served as therapy for me, you know. And so I made a couple songs in the studio, and they sounded great, and I started showing them to people, and they're like, man, this is cool. And so like the other part is like everybody likes to be recognized or like validated. And it's been overwhelming in terms of validation, in terms of just people liking it or sharing it or relating to it. The song I told you about that I just wrote, for those of you that weren't around for that conversation, obviously, I wrote a song about me and a girl having a conversation, and she tells me that she doesn't want to live anymore. And you'll have to listen to hear the full story. But
we'll make sure we'll have that link for you when it comes out, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you know, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second.
Oh, you were talking about the lady that you were having a conversation with.
Yeah, I sent that to somebody who I kind of let review some of my stuff before it comes out, and he sent me back something I didn't expect. It was kind of the first time something like this happened. He said, wow, this reminds me of a relationship that I had with a girlfriend in high school. And about, he heard the song, and he heard it as somebody encountering a mental health issue and not exactly knowing how to help. And that things, you know, took their turn anyways, despite not knowing exactly how to respond to it and the feelings associated to that. And I thought that was really powerful for me to get that back from somebody first off, I have no idea about that aspect of their lives or that story, but to hear that, you know, on a Monday morning or whatever, I shot this file over to him and he's sitting at work, you know, kind of checking it out, and then immediately, like, you know, takes him back to this place 20 years ago. Like, that was super, super cool.
You know, I always looked at music as a calendar. You know, so when you hear certain things, it'll take you back to a certain place and everything like that, and that's just crazy. You also were sharing that since high school, you've had a certain amount, it was kind of an obscene amount of people who have committed suicide.
Yeah, I don't even like to count or recollect necessarily, but I think the last time, between tragic deaths and suicides, I think the last time I took some time to count that up, as terrible as it sounds, I think it was like 14. And so a lot of that, you know, just real wild mental health related things that just never made it to, I guess, the surface, right? For people to intervene, or for people, and a lot of these friends are people that I would have never really even expected that from necessarily. You know, like when people are always like, oh, you know, hindsight's 20/20, or you start looking for signs or things like that. And, you know, I don't really equate sadness or depression even as an immediate jump to be fearful about suicide, right? Like, I don't know if that's quite, for some people it might be, but I don't, you know, I think there's varying levels and degrees, and you got to feel that out. And for the ones that I knew or that happened, it was always pretty, like, unexpected and just kind of like, wow, you know, like that day they were in such a dark space. And when I think back on it, you know, a lot of those friends were quite a bit younger, and it seemed like it was really like a dire situation where, like, a very drastic measure was taken, right?
Yeah, and where the world is right now, I mean, there's some people who are still afraid to come out of their house or go out anywhere. It's just getting worse as far as mental health is concerned. And I know that you're working on. You're pretty much almost like a psychologist. Well,
not a psychologist, almost a clinical social worker. So I'm working on my license to be a clinical social worker, which means I can start doing private practice and kind of do that on my own, which would still, you know, if I were to do that on my own, I would still want to consult with people and be a part of some sort of team. You know, I think sometimes people go on their own, and that's great. For me, I still like that team with me and to kind of check it out with people and be like, hey, am I way off the beaten path here? Or, like, are you seeing this too? You know?
Yeah, we're always better together.
Yeah.
So that brings me to this. What are your plans for 2022 and beyond? It sounds like I know I've been following you on social, and I know that you've got heat dropping. You got heat rocks dropping all the time.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's kind of a mystery. I mean, I'm definitely gonna do my job. You know, I don't have any plans to leave the school. I also work at the Family Peace Initiative doing batterer intervention assessments, so I do that on the side too, which is really powerful and important in my life. And you know, I've kind of taken on instilling kind of the value or the importance of safety and connectedness in others, and that's something that I kind of adopted from working at the Family Peace Initiative. And safety and connectedness is kind of the core of life, right? Like, if you're not safe and you're not connected to the things around you, whether that's your family or your friends or your community, then you're just kind of floating, right? And if you're not connected and you're not feeling safe, well, then you're in some sort of state of paralysis trying to make that happen, or just feeling completely out of it. And when I think about people that you know, complete suicide, I would almost 100% guarantee that either safety or connectedness was not present, right? And so if you can reinforce that and reinstate that and instill that in people, then I think we're going to be off way better. And I really try to work with the kids too on getting them to understand those things too. You know, not everybody goes to school to learn how to read or to write or do math or whatever. You know, I mean, everybody does, but, you know, there's also kids that go to school to really learn, like, how to interact with people and how to understand people. And you'll find out quickly in a school which kids go home to that being role model, you know, appropriately, to which kids go home and don't have any of it or have some of it. And that's a beautiful thing, right? Even with all the ups and downs and the positive and the negative, there's still some really great work to be done, and it's just always really powerful. And so for the next year, I don't know. I want to finish the clinical license. I want to make more music. I want to make more videos. I probably need to grow a pair and start performing a little more. You know, I might start with, like, some little poetry, speakeasy types, you know, kind of spoken word things. I'm not really too worried about that, but I really want to kind of try to elevate the music and turn that into something where nothing is wasted, which that's probably the goal for 2022, is to keep on like using everything from my past that I used to deem as like problematic or something that I'd rather not talk about or not have be known about me, boosting it up and just like using that as just collecting all that and just using it as fuel for the fire, right? And then with the music, you know, I thought for a long time, like, how am I going to do this intentionally and with purpose? And like, I don't just want to put out hot bars, and like, I'm not trying to be like the coolest, the hardest. Matter of fact, I need people to start being softer. Everybody wants to come off as the hardest, and it's like, fall back with that.
I love that.
You know, like, yeah. I mean, it's cool. I get it. You know, like, there's certain things that come with being the hardest, right? But like, you also lose out on a lot being the hardest, right? You don't want to be feared all the time, right? Like, that's not the play. I mean, people might tell you it is. That's okay, but it's not.
No, I mean, I'm with it. I mean, and like I said, this podcast is not about me, so I'm not going to get on my soapbox right now. But
Sure.
Man, I feel you. How can the people connect with you on social or otherwise?
Well, I mean, I got a phone number. If you know some people that know me, you can get my number. Everybody can give it out. At Jephthah's Mind on Instagram, all one word. That's really where I would direct people for that. But I'm kind of available for anything, really. Like, I help out with a coat fund that's now housed through 501, and like I always get emails and phone calls about kids that need coats, and so I love doing that. It's a very tangible, real thing that you can give to somebody and see the immediate benefit, right? Somebody not being cold anymore, feeling more comfortable now. Maybe now they can walk to school and not get frostbite, right? So that's really cool. But the music thing, I think, really is the 2022 goal, which my idea is to start doing shows that feel like therapy for people.
Okay.
So I want people to come to a show eventually and leave and be like, am I better off for having gone to a rap show tonight? Right? And so there's a rapper in from Maryland named IDK. I don't know if you've heard of him before.
I'm not sure.
Crazy talent. And he ended up like one of the Ivy League schools, I think it was Harvard, like ended up letting him come teach a financial literacy class there. Because like he grew up super poor and then like started making some money through music, and like they basically, I think Chase and him partnered and he started teaching financial literacy, and somehow worked in music with that. And so then when people graduated his like 10-week program, they got like all the tools they needed to have a home studio, $10,000 towards their debt, this newfound knowledge, obviously. So like that was really cool. And one of the things I really liked from his live shows was that he would, and this was even before like Astro World and all that, you know, he would tell people like, hey, everybody on your right, look to the man on your left. Tell him I got your back. Look to the man on your right. Tell him I got your back. You know, and that kind of stuff was really dope. And I liked that he really worked the room. He didn't just come do his show. He really like engaged people and involved them. And then so he might have like an emotional song and somebody might shout out something like, there's one video on the internet that's really crazy where like some lady shouts out like, I was raped, you know, like at a rap show. She just shouts this out. And like he comes over to her and he stops his song and he like says some healing words, right? And like feels it with her, and they're all just sitting in the soup together, and it's super emotional. And then like they hug it out and she has a seat again. He goes back up and continues with the next thing, you know. But it was like safety and connectedness are very much at the forefront, and he's always thinking about like, what's the message that I'm giving people, and what do I want them to take away from it? And so that's kind of what I've been developing. And especially, I don't know, I think you know Trinette. You know my friend Trinette?
I've got a song with her. I've got a few songs with her.
So I tap in with her quite a bit, and we kind of check out music, and I have her look over some of my stuff, and she's really been putting me on to some of that too, like working the energy. And that's kind of my goal, I guess, you know, is kind of how do you do a live show and get it hype, but also bring it down, but also keep it very real, right? And not real on like some hard whatever, but like real in terms of like the feelings and the safety and the connection and the honesty in the music, right? And then how do you present that to people in a way that, you know, you kind of like have it be fun and entertaining and energetic, but then you also kind of learn to work the room and bring that back down, so you don't send people out in the parking lot and they end up shooting each other or something. You know what I mean? I mean, that a lot of times that's how things go, you know. Unfortunately, in rap and hip hop and live shows, you know, a lot of times people show up, super hype music pops off, at the end of the night, all of a sudden like the crunkest thing comes out of the speakers and everybody's gassed up, you know, and mix in some alcohol or what have you, and it can be problematic. And I don't want that. I don't, you know, I think that's you can't control people necessarily, but you can really set the stage for some successful situations, I think, by calculating that.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right on that. And it is a skill, how to, bring it up and bring it back down.
And then I think about Dad. I think about him at a church. Is it that different? I don't know. Not really. He's still spitting.
Whenever you're on a stage, there's stage presence and there's ways to go about to control the energy.
Yeah.
Well, Jephthah, we're coming to the end of this podcast, man. It was such of a pleasure to have you on here.
Thanks for having me.
And like I told you guys, that we had a treat for y'all today. Got into a lot of really cool things and everything, man. And it's bigger than the music. There's a message in it. There's purpose. There's principles and everything. So, we'll be connecting with you guys shortly, and this podcast will be up for you guys to view soon. So, boom, we up out this joint.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found today's episode informative and inspiring. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to Pathways and Means wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to learn more about CPM and how to grow creatively into the future, visit creativepathwaysandmeans.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok, where we post daily content and connect and engage with creators like you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.